Okie doke. All right. Hey, Catherine. Hopefully you can see and or hear me. I can't see myself. So I don't know.
I can hear you.
All right, cool. Make sure the focus is on, stays on. Good deal. And this should be automatically recording so that we have access for kind of anybody later on if they would want it. All right, so let's start class here. It is right about time. Let's check in. How are research notebooks, lab field notebooks going?
Messy.
All right. You don't have to impress me by like filling it out in a week or whatever. Just as long as everybody's kind of in the habit of adding a little bit of stuff to it, kind of just whenever you're working, just have it to hand. And whenever you're not working, have it to hand. Cool. That's good. How are annotated bibliographies going? Now that we've had a chance to just start talking about forward and reverse citation searches, and we practiced that just a little bit in class together, is everybody just starting to have a chance to find things that might be useful and start throwing them in the big pile in your annotated bibliography? Cool. All right. And don't worry about transferring those citations into your bulleted outline of your thesis or dissertation proposal just yet. We're coming to that shortly, but at this point, it's just enough to have chapter headings and then section headings or subheadings, however you want to think of those, and just start filling in some bullet list level individual thoughts that will later become sentences. Don't worry about wordsmithing, writing anything. Don't even worry about the perfect order, right? We're keeping it in outline or bullet list format for those of you who want to use this particular approach to writing, so that it's lower stress. You don't have to rewrite anything if you need to reorder stuff. It's very, very common as you're building out sort of your thought process, building out the narrative or the story from background through results eventually. And keeping it in outline format keeps it pretty modular and so forth. So that's a pretty important decision fatigue reducing kind of a thing. We'll also start talking about some other sort of care and feeding of the human grad student kinds of things. How are things going with your milestones to graduation checklist? Remember there was that file that had stuff kind of semester by semester? Has anybody had a chance, just kind of show of hands, had a chance to even just look through that and go, okay, check, check, check. Oop, need to take care of that, or this isn't really right for this semester. I'll cut and paste that into a later semester. Cool, good. All right. Hopefully it felt pretty good to kind of zoom through the, application and onboarding stuff, and you're one or a couple of semesters in. So lots of checks that first time through. We want to build a very positive vibe with this checklist, not live in fear of it. Cool. How are other things going? Just other sort of administrivia level things going with each of your programs that are not covered in the writing of your proposal or the weeding of that milestones to graduation checklist. There's lots of little stuff like forming your committee if you haven't done that already, and so forth. Show of hands, has everybody formed their committee yet? Most, okay.
Yeah, not all of them.
Not yet?
No.
Got it.
I do have a question about that.
Yeah, sure. What question?
Does everybody on your committee have to be from the same department?
No. In fact, and there's a very specific reasoning for that no. Your committee is, for master's person, 3 members at least. You can't have more, and that's not a bad idea if you have multiple people inside or outside your department that have critical skills for your success. That is a specific field technique or lab technique, or they're really good at building, a certain kind of statistical model that you just know you're going to need a little bit later on. It's okay to have and not at all uncommon to have 4 people on a master's committee or more than 5 for a PhD committee. So the reason that not everybody in your committee is from your program or your department, depending on your master's degrees, architecture, is that professors are a very specific and strange kind of human being. Most of us are tenured, which means that short of really, really screwing the pooch or something, like really, criminal stuff, it's hard to fire a professor. And so, just as a brief aside, tenure was originally intended to protect faculty members, researchers in particular, who were doing research that was important but not popular or cool. So if somebody was, Kinsey in the mid 1900s, studying sex in an American context where, even talking about sex wasn't really socially acceptable. Tenure was designed to protect those folks. And then, of course, over time with feature creep and organizational bloat, tenure is extended to most faculty members at most institutions as a nice benefit. It's nice to have job security, but not necessarily, it can lead to some pretty unhealthy dynamics. So imagine normal people with normal people quirks and idiosyncrasies, crank that up to 11 Spinal Tap style on professors who are unique, and then make them unfireable and coop them up together for 35 years across the course of everybody's career. It can lead to a lot of toxicity in some departments. So my wife's PhD program, for example, was in a department that was extremely unhealthy for the faculty members. And we have an expression in English, maybe you have something in Lithuanian that's similar. Shit flows downhill.
Oh, yeah.
So when there are things unhealthy among the faculty members, it means the grad students suffer and suffer a lot. And so a lot of graduate students in my wife's program, her first program, would quit halfway through and, have to go back to their home country with a bunch of education debt or something like that and nothing to show for it. I mean, it was a disaster. Like it was a trash fire with human corpses in it. Disaster. So she had to switch programs, and that cost her a couple of years of organizing and getting restarted. So all that to say, it's important that not everybody in your committee is not in one program to avoid the possibility of any particular department's toxic culture or groupthink or intellectual inbreeding is another thing that can happen at universities, where it's the same people sort of echo chambering with each other all the time. So there's not a lot of fresh input. So everybody's required to have at least one person from some other department somewhere else across campus. And that person serves a very, very important role, an ethical role of, being the student's advocate, advising the student with research skills and reading through their dissertation or thesis and providing edits and stuff like that, but also as a check on, hey, we had this faculty or this committee meeting with you, and what was that argument that your advisor and the other person in your department got into? That was a waste of everybody's time. I'm concerned for you. Are you okay? Blink twice if you're being held hostage. So yeah, that's a long answer to your question, but it's important that you meet the requirement that one person on your committee is outside of your department.
I was hoping to be able to branch outside of them.
Yeah, that's absolutely by design. Yeah, so do that. The best way to figure out good folks for approaching and figuring out folks to avoid is talking with other grad students. Also talk with your advisor. Your advisor has worked on a whole bunch of graduate committees, probably dozens of them, and over time gets a pretty good working knowledge of, John Reeves over in the zoology program is amazing at biostatistics and can build, a custom 5-way ANOVA model with interaction factors for this complicated research question that you have. He's absolutely the person you want on your committee. He will get you through. And sometimes the advice from, usually more likely from your fellow grad students versus your advisor, is stay away from so-and-so. Do not put them on their committee. It's gonna be a disaster. This person is not helpful, and they've got a pretty bad dynamic going on. So, people are people. Most of us are just trying to all figure it out and get by. But every once in a while, you get somebody who's just a pretty bad idea. I had one person on my PhD committee who I was warned about my first year as a PhD student, and I was walking myself down the garden path. And I shouldn't have done that because the PhD defense was pretty uncomfortable with him. Everybody else was fine, and they all were pretty, sort of embarrassed and felt bad for me on my behalf that he was the way that he was in my defense of my dissertation. It's fine. It was a couple of horrible hours. I'll never have to go through it again, and I will probably never speak to that guy again. But, I would rather you learn from my fail and very carefully vet or weed out folks before asking them onto your committee. That committee is, for the most part, you're not going to see a lot of them once a semester, to have a regularly scheduled committee meeting to stay on pace and fill out paperwork, and eventually to, evaluate your research work and graduate you. But yeah, there's no reason that has to be any harder or more stressful than being a grad student already is. So, does that answer that question? That's a really great and important question, so I'm glad that you asked it. Other questions on committees? Yeah.
Do the committee members have to be from SIU, or do they from other universities?
No, they can't be ex officio. One of my wife's 2 co-advisors on her eventual committee was a former faculty member at SIU and then moved down to be a department head elsewhere, and knew a lot of the techniques that she needed to use in her analyses. She did mouse brain surgeries.
What?
Yeah, that's a thing. Anyway, yeah, another story for another time.
Okay.
But all that to say, yeah, it's absolutely fine. If the person is outside of the university, they don't even have to be a professor, but they do need to be a credentialed professional at typically the peak of their field, whatever that is, with the terminal degree. So if it's not a PhD, you can possibly get that approved under specific circumstances, but you're looking for world-class level experts to guide you. So, yeah.
So my question was kind of similar. Can my committee member be from another country?
Yeah, that's fine. One of my current PhD students, former committee members, then she started doing a whole bunch of field work out in like Borneo. It was basically impossible to get in touch with, so we all agreed that she would step back. But she was absolutely the one world-class expert for that particular area of research, and so we had to have her on the research committee for Wes, my PhD student. She was awesome. She helped out a ton. Just kind of getting him and me, quite honestly, sort of oriented in a good direction and a productive direction for his research. So that's okay. So like, if you have a favorite professor back home, that's totally fine. Yeah. And you want to manage up with your graduate committee. Are you guys familiar with the term or the principle of managing up? All right, so this is a useful life skill, but particularly important for us. So managing up is just nothing more than basically managing your boss, right? So in counseling and the world of therapy, there's this idea of people treat you to an extent how you train them to treat you. So you want to train your committee members to treat you in specific and productive and healthy ways. So that looks a lot like communicating more rather than less. The graduate students who are in regular contact with me, even just with a quick email, hey, we haven't talked in like a month. I'm still alive. Here's what I'm working on. Things are going fine. See you at the committee meeting in 2 months or whatever. That is unfortunately the exception rather than the rule, but I really, really, really appreciate it when a grad student keeps me in the loop. It saves a lot of effort on those crucial committee meetings. It's hard to get professors into the same room at the same time because we're all running off doing research or teaching classes or off on sabbatical somewhere, you know. And we waste a lot less time in those committee meetings, as crucial as they are, getting up to speed when we've got just an hour for 4 very specific people to get into the same room at the same time and all looking at each other and all of that. So managing up for committees is staying in touch. It's also things like understanding the work and communication style of each of your committee members. Some folks really, really, really just bloom with you one-on-one in an office meeting, and you guys can chat for, you know, hours at a time about your research project and all these different things. Oh, did you think about XYZ? Or, oh, we should send an email to so-and-so. They're not doing research in this area, but they're a land manager working in a habitat real similar to what you're working on. They're one of my old grad students. We should contact them and see if they can help us with your project or something like that. Just some people don't think about you and your project until you're in front of them. So other folks are totally fine. They'll check in on you and just say, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. How are you doing? Is there anything I can help with? We'll see people all across that spectrum. So wherever any of your committee members are along that spectrum of get in front of them, you know, get into their awareness and leverage their expertise versus they're happy coming to you and stuff like that. Pour just a little bit of effort into figuring out where each person is on that spectrum. Are they super extroverted? They're probably chasing you down and talking your leg off. Are they super introverted? A lot of professors are. So you kind of have to, you know, catch them during office hours as they're slinking away to the car or something. You know, it doesn't matter. It's not good or evil to be either one of those, of course, but it will be an observable difference or elevation in quality from the insights, the guidance you get with them. And in particular, and this is not a formal part of your graduate program, but possibly the most important of all, if you can figure out how to mesh with each of your committee members, they are worth their weight in gold in terms of connecting you with job opportunities, writing you glowing recommendations, and so on and so forth. When I'm the exterior, outside of the students department, third member on a graduate committee, I don't generally see that person as much as somebody who's in my program, of course. But sometimes I get feedback of, wow, you wrote a really, really detailed recommendation letter for this job application that I put out as I was getting ready to defend my thesis. Thanks for that. I'd never seen anything like that before. You know, it's harder for me to write that amazing multi-page long, specific, glowing recommendation letter, strong recommendation letter, if I don't know you as well, right? So be in contact. Give people reasons to gush about you over the phone or writing that recommendation letter or filling out the form. You know, be authentic about it. You don't want to be ingratiating or weird or manipulative, but, you know, treat your committee members well with respect and a lot of good communication. And typically you'll see them respond very positively to that. A lot of us are here working as professors instead of in industry, literally making 2 or 3 times the paycheck because we like the life way, the style, the working with intelligent people, motivated people to do knowledge creation instead of just making a bunch of money and being kind of miserable at it, you know? So, right, give us an excuse to be awesome to you, you know? Just be in contact. So, for folks coming in from, you know, different cultures or countries or whatever, this can be an adjustment. Maybe your academic tradition or kind of the academic subculture that you're used to in your home country is pretty different than this. But here, yeah, be present, collaborate, communicate a lot with your community members, not just with your advisor. Your advisor's the easy one, right? That's the one you're working with each week, but the others can be just as valuable to you. Okay, cool. It's always a little bit scary thinking about, oh God, what comes next after this degree? And right, we're not thinking about that much right now. We're just getting through the proposal. That's cool. But you make the way smooth for that, oh God, what comes next answer, kind of starting now with how you treat and how you manage up, really, those committee members. Okay? So big sermon, but treat them like people and manage them. Help them be effective for you. Question?
Yeah, so I put my committee together last semester and I still have yet to meet with them, but I see them around all the time. And I've informally just kind of had them sign off on that course outline thing, but I have yet to actually meet with them, and I feel like I don't really know what to bring to a first meeting. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to
sure
talk about. I don't know what I'm expecting.
All right, let's talk about your first committee meeting. Abby's first committee meeting. All right, so for committee meeting number 1, we want to do a couple of specific things. First, in order to have it in the first place, it sort of forces this earlier step of vetting folks, establishing who they are, how they need to be worked with, and so forth. If there's a super overloaded committee member on your committee that, you know, if you see them in the hallway and you say, oh, hey, let's chat sometime about XYZ, if they're super overloaded, they're going to forget that 15 seconds later. You have to send that person an email, right? You want to figure all that stuff out. So figure out the group members. And typically the person outside your department is the hardest to nail down because you have a lot of options, but less information typically about them. So again, talk with your research groups, other graduate students. Ask your advisor for the committee form that you're going to fill out at this meeting and get signed by everybody. Ask for copies of their last 5 or 10 graduate students' committee meeting forms so that you can see what names show up on there, right? That's kind of a pro gamer move. Not everybody thinks to do that, but the folks who have most recently served with your advisor's other graduate students, they're probably not completely the wrong planet for you to search for, okay? 2, you want to get this formalized. So you get your committee forms signed by everybody present. So that's going to be who are the committee members, I believe is one form. And crucially, there's probably a better name for it, but we'll call it the roster. And then your course or plan of study. This is the list of the classes that you're going to take as a graduate student. And in forestry, at least, that is 1 required class, this class, to figure out how to be a grad student and effective at it. and also at least one statistics class. Whether or not you're doing a statistics-based or quantitative-based research project, you got to take a statistics class. The grad school in its wisdom has imposed that shackle on everybody. So that's 2 classes out of a whole bunch of classes. So master's students have to get what, something like 30 credit hours, something like that, 30. And then PhD students are something more than that. PhD students have an additional stats class requirement, I believe.
Biostatistics, John Reeves.
Say again?
Biostatistics, John Reeves.
Biostatistics, John Reeves. That guy, he's a ninja.
I know.
All right. So, super quiet, super chill guy, like scary smart. If he's ever corrupted by aliens and turned against humanity, we're doomed. So that plan of study is something that you want to have worked out with your advisor beforehand. Have a slate of classes ready for the other 2 people to look through and sign off of. Usually this is mostly a formality. You and your advisor are going to sign you up for all the classes that are going to be useful to you. And maybe if you have space, one class, maybe a couple classes as a PhD student with a little bit more space in your schedule. Maybe a couple of classes that are valuable and interesting, but not directly contributory to your research. But for the most part, it's going to be a pretty obvious list of classes, mostly in your department, a few outside of your department. For me, studying recreation or human ecology at Virginia Tech, I took a couple of sociology classes way across campus, and that was enlightening because their grad student and graduate class culture completely different than that in forestry and natural resources. Completely, worlds different. It was nice. They had like coffee and popcorn and stuff. It was very homey. Anyway, in forestry, it was like, let me pick that tick off your shoulder while we talk about chainsaws. So anyway, all that to say, you want to have that list. It's pretty easy to fill up that list of classes. And if your committee members, the other committee members aside from your advisor, want to suggest something that you hadn't thought about, that's part of why they're there. Keep them happy. Say, yeah, no, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. And then sign up for that. Or put that on, amend the plan of study and, send around the PDF for those digital signatures. This is not particularly hard to do, but it's way better done in advance. If you waste time on this first committee meeting just hammering this list out, it's kind of we're showing up a day late and $1 short kind of a vibe. So have that ready to go. Not a lot of work, just do it. Third, you want to talk through what is my project, what is my schedule constraint, what is my funding level, who are the project partners like agencies. You want to get everybody up to speed on your project as far as it is developed. Now, just like with this class, for this first committee meeting, you may not have all the answers ready for this, okay? But in your first committee meeting, if you can hand them, or even better, email to them several days before so they can scan it before the meeting. If you can hand them your proposal as far as you've gotten it, well, that answers a lot of these questions already, and you look smart. So it is a good thing to have this proposal underway. Good thing we're doing that. So it's shorter to say on board committee members with your project. So this is the first of many moments where your advisor says, we're doing this this geospatial project. John Reeve, I know you've got 40 deer collar GPSs with cellular radios in them. Are those being used, this April through July? Can we use that equipment? And he says, no, but GBR, Guillaume Bastille Rousseau, has 800 collars. He can probably spare a few that fall off the back of the truck or something. No. So this is where you're getting down to brass tacks, right? So fill everybody in, give the vision first, and then get down to logistics. How are we going to do this? I'm going to need this specific field skill from my external committee member by March 31st, because we ship out for field data collection, April 5th or something like that. So this is kind of a two-stage third step, right? So get everybody up to speed, and then, start hammering out, hey, when can I meet with you over coffee to talk about this field technique? Or can you send me this manuscript that you mentioned in your biostatistics class that you're working on that's not quite ready yet? I could totally use that same approach in my study, but I don't think we can wait for it to go through the whole publication process. Can I get the galley proof or the manuscript draft or whatever stage it's at, and start incorporating that into my methods chapter, and so forth. So that's the very sort of practical, this is the meat and potatoes, as we say, of this committee meeting. You just got to get through a couple of administrivia steps first. Okay, so this is a solid hour of work, and you wanna start this meeting on time and end it on time, because again, professors are hard to get all in the same room. Unfortunately, how the first committee meeting tends to show up is you're busy. We're busy. We get all the way to exam week of insert semester number, and you or your advisor, has the moment of clarity, as alcoholics call it, and sits up in the middle of the night and says, oh shit, we haven't had our committee meeting this semester. We got to do this right now. Sends out an email at 4 a.m, and 3 days later during finals week, because half the professors are going to leave for field research over the summer, and we all just jam it in there during exam week. Somehow, this happens every semester. It's like 5 or 6 committee meetings in a couple of days of exam week, and everybody is completely out of their minds with trying to grade and get, fieldwork logistics finished, plane tickets, OtterBox cases filled, whatever. Pelicans filled up. Pelicans are kind of boxed, not like shoving birds with equipment, and so forth. So if you can, avoid the press of exam week. That's a total bro move to get out of your busy exam week and hours. But that's often where it goes. If that's how it shakes out, that's okay, right? It's more important to have the meeting and get these different balls rolling than it is to kind of tiptoe around everybody and never reach those perfect conditions. It's never going to be perfect. Perfect is the enemy of good enough. Okay, cool. So there's no reason to do an exam, a committee meeting at a particular time. It can be at any point, and it can be if the most effective way forward is with Microsoft Teams or Zoom and one or a couple of remote people, especially if somebody is in another country on your committee. Do it, set it up. We have a really nice facility, room 107, that is specifically wired and set up for teleconferencing. Big screen TV, high resolution webcams, all that stuff, smart boards. And you can, take over that room for however long you need it for free. It does tend to get very busy during exam week. So if you can, avoid that. You'll sometimes get advice from your fellow grad students, particularly relative to specific committee members that you want to include or exclude. They'll say things like, oh, Dr. Nielsen is awesome in meetings. Definitely bring a bunch of sugary drinks and just have them on the table. So he'll help out with me. I'm joking. Dr. Nielsen isn't actually like this. He's a good guy and a really great researcher. But the joke would be, you know, get him sugared out so he's like super up the first half of the meeting, and then for the second half of the meeting, when he tends to be cranky, he's just in an insulin coma and not a problem, right? Managing upwards, right? No. So just informal stuff like some people like to bring snacks and refreshments to committee meetings. That's not necessary ever. You're not on the hook to try to bribe us, okay? And there's a sort of a happy range. The technical term is de minimis. That is, if you're showing up with a whole bunch of like expensive food or drinks or something like that, it's a little bit weird. It's like, why is this person trying to, you know, get us off our guard on our back foot with these delicious foods? You know, if you want to be cool, like bring, I don't know, a pot of coffee or a tray of cookies or something like that. Like a couple of bucks, if anything. You guys are grad students. You're not responsible for feeding us, okay? But to the extent that you can have not formally required stuff, but things that are a good idea, like, you know, a folder or a binder for each committee member with your proposal, your forms already printed out, with whatever is appropriate for that particular meeting. If you can have that stuff ready to go and nicely collated, that makes things a lot easier, because we're going to go away from this meeting to another exam week, grad student committee meeting, and 3 more after that, and so forth. And we're going to forget that, you know, we had to circle back with you to sign something, and then you're hosed because we're off on some other continent, and stuff like that. So if it's all ready and there, this is a good brief effort the night before or the day before to hammer away at that stuff, just to make sure you have all your ducks in a row, all of your blanks to sign printed out and ready. Have a pen, right? As goofy as and as basic as that sounds, have a pen to sign the forms. Make it blue ink. Other questions about that first committee meeting? I don't want to make more of an ado out of it than it is. It's a very practical, let's get some, you know, administrative done, and that crucial third step of onboarding everybody, getting everybody aware of what's going on. It's not anything more than that, but it's important to do that. Yeah.
If we are talking about unofficial requirements, so for example, business casual or business professional?
That's a great question. Generally speaking, you want to be dressed one little notch more formally than the most formally dressed person in the room. And since most of us are working in, like, I'm teaching class today wearing a beanie, right? We don't come to class wearing tuxes or to these meetings. Like that would be a little bit extra. You know, flip-flops and board shorts, not a good idea. You know, especially for me, I got these lily white chicken legs, and it's just, you know, I shouldn't have skipped leg day. But anyway, yeah, so you just, the good rule of thumb with that, and for conferences or, you know, whatever else, is just be a little bit more nicely dressed than the next person in the room. And that way it's not overachieving, and you're definitely not going to make the mistake of being too casually dressed and sticking out in that way. You know, you are training people how to treat you, and if you show up with an appropriate level of fit and finish in your clothing and your appearance and stuff like that, then people will treat you that way, like you're putting some effort into it. So maybe they should too, you know? Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Cool, good. Yeah, for the most part, you know, professors are generally pretty informal people. We don't stand on a lot of occasion or tradition, but yeah, don't be way out ahead of us or way behind in terms of any of the soft skills of it, and it won't be a big deal, right? Other questions? These are all great. These are exactly what you should be asking. Okay, so the main thing at this point is going to be to start networking around, build your social capital with your fellow grad students. They are your secret weapon for avoiding the landmines of a bad person. not a bad person, a less effective person for you according to your needs and work style. Pretty important stuff. And all of the skills that you cultivate for putting together this first committee meeting, they're going to transfer directly into your conference presentations and networking there. They're going to transfer directly into, interviewing and being well prepared and, adequately dressed for that kind of a thing later on as well. So this is not at all just mindless effort for the sake of looking busy. All of this transfers forward. So it's good stuff. Okay. Cool. Wow. We've got 10 minutes of class left. So let's talk about committee meetings to kind of finish it out. For the future committee meetings, all of the rest are basically this format with less paperwork, except for the last one. All of the middle meetings are just sort of progress updates. How are things going? Is there anything we can help you with? What questions do you have for us? What's the progress? What have you got accomplished and what are you careening towards next? The last committee meeting you're going to have is effectively your thesis or dissertation defense. So let's kind of round out class today talking through what are the normal currents and undercurrents to expect during your thesis or dissertation seminar, which is the public presentation of it, the public question and answer session following that, and then the private or closed door defense of your thesis or dissertation, which is typically up to a couple of hours long. And as you heard from my personal story, can be horrible. Generally speaking, it's not. So what that's going to look like is, again, typically like a month beforehand or 2 weeks beforehand, you'll have to put out a flyer. You have to notify the graduate school that you're getting ready to defend. They list your defense and presentation or seminar on the grad school's website. It's just a continuously scrolling list right on the front page of the grad school. Check that out if you haven't seen that before. And around the time of this announcement going out, a month or a couple of weeks before, you have to send your thesis or dissertation to your committee members. I think for PhD students, you have to give committee members a month to read through it and review it.
Yep.
And for master's students, it's either a month or 2 weeks, depending on the program. This is called your defense draft. It is not your final draft, but it is as final as you can make it. It's got to be perfect. Got it? All right. Now, for this class, perfect is the enemy of good enough, but that defense draft is as perfect as you can make it. But that's outside the scope of this class, right? That's like results and discussion sections. We don't even worry about that yet. So, send your doc to the committee in advance. X weeks, 2 or 4 weeks before. Check with the grad school or your advisor on what that specific number is for you. And then while you are waiting for them to read through it, you prepare. You take your entire dissertation or thesis, you switch in Word back to outline view instead of like formatted for printing view. And you copy paste that outline into PowerPoint's outline bar, and it will create an entire PowerPoint of your whole ass thesis or dissertation in a couple of keystrokes. And then you delete like 99.9% of the text. We'll talk about that stuff more a little bit later as we practice the exact same workflow in preparing your thesis proposal seminars at the end of this semester. So you prepare by getting your presentation ready, practicing it in the venue where you're going to present. Never just practice this at home. You want to know all the idiosyncrasies or the quirks of the laptop that's available that will be running it. If it's powerful enough to run the cool slide animations and videos and web links and embedded data files that you're putting in there, if you want to put those in. And you want to know if there's like a burned out spot on the LCD projector and not to put any critical graphics in that spot. Okay, so prepare, practice, and get sleep. Get a lot of sleep, especially the night before your defense. When it comes for the day of defense, your last meeting, you are gonna give your seminar, which is 45 minutes. It's your PowerPoint, and you run the show. You own that room. And then there's the question and answer, which is usually pretty mild. You got a friendly audience, right? Because you stacked the whole room with all of your friends. That's a good idea. Stack the room with all of your friends. And sometimes you'll have family members there who are just so excited for you, just so proud of you, and want to pinch you on the cheek and just say, good job. You know, no matter how today goes, we'll still love you. And of course, your community members too. So, and then anybody from the general public is welcome to come in as well. So typically, other grad students will kind of dogpile in and feed you softball questions for the question and answer session, so you don't have to answer anything weird or hard. No, we would never actually advise that, except for when we do. And then finally, of course, the defense. So people will ask well-meaning, typically pretty lightweight questions. This is the first time that a lot of people have heard in any real detail what you're doing, right? So their questions are going to be mostly exploratory or introductory. They're just kind of thinking through or processing, or sometimes you'll get a question that's not really a question, like, so your project reminds me of, you know, and they go off on some tangent and they tell a story for 5 minutes, and you're like, can you please restate the question? And they say, oh, well, I guess I don't have a question. Have a nice day. And that's 5 minutes you'll never get back. So that's not usually too bad. And then everybody else files out. You are asked to leave the room as well as your advisor talks with your committee and says, okay, so seminar is good. Did everybody have a chance to review this thesis or dissertation? Great, okay. Does anybody have any questions for me or your other committee members about this project before we bring so-and-so in and start the defense? So there might or might not be any questions. That anxious waiting outside the door while they're talking about you, and they are, can be anywhere from 30 seconds up to, in a very rare extreme case, maybe 20 minutes worth of conversation. Usually the advisor says, okay, this is all a really good conversation, but you know, we really got to get into this thing. We've only got this room for 3 hours, so let's do this. They'll bring you in, and everybody around the table or on the Zoom or Teams screen, they get to ask any question that they want, literally anything. It doesn't have to be about your research. It can be a hypothetical about, okay, so let's say 5 years from now, you're working for the United States Geological Survey, doing projects like you've completed here. How would you tackle this particular research question? They give you the research question, and then they sit back, right? And so that question, you can answer it a million different ways. And really what they're asking you to do is talk me through another thesis or dissertation level project, but with this other research question, to see if you can synthesize what you've learned and apply it in an adjacent but not the same thing. Like, were you a worker robot that did some research and got some stuff done here, but you can't like guide a project like that later on because you don't understand sort of the how of the craft of science? Or maybe you answer that question very well. That's a great question. So let me ask a clarifying question back to you about this research question. Is the scope of this, you know, do you mean this to be, you know, a 5-year study, or is this like a long-term ecological research station type thing? This is a generation worth of work, you know, put some scope on it. And so in asking them a question back to clarify a big open question like that, that's part of the answer. Does that make sense? You're showing that okay, you are thinking about, what are the project administration, the research design, the informal or peripheral route kinds of considerations that a researcher has to take into account in addition to the formal and clear statistical methods or field research data collection or whatever, and so forth. And so those questions are sometimes about a statement, a hot take that you had in your discussion section, which is where the hot takes go. We'll say, I'm not sure you supported this assertion that you made with the data that you collected. So explain to me kind of your thinking on this paragraph here. How did you get to that conclusion? Your data says, it looks like your data says XYZ. And so you explain that. So yeah, they can ask anything internal to your project, extrapolating from your project. They can ask you about something totally unrelated, your favorite Broadway show, whatever. That process is usually anywhere from a very pleasant and engaging 45 minutes to an absolutely tooth-curling awful 3+ hours. And you go until they say you don't go. And for the most part, it's a bunch of chill professors who are, interested in what you're doing. They're excited for you and so forth. It's your advisor's job not to let you sit for that defense until you're ready to be successful at it. Okay, that's very important. So if your advisor is saying, well, let's take another month or so to really sort of tie off this project, make sure you're fully comfortable with this before we, throw you into the defense and stuff like that. That's a gentle way of saying, hey, we need some more time. We need to bake you a little bit more in the oven before you're fully cooked and ready to go. Or whatever. Or they'll say, hey, you've been doing great this whole time. You've been slaying for 3.5 semesters. Let's do this thing. This is going to be a blast. Are you excited? Let's go. So don't read into it was 45 minutes or 3.5 hours. The point is you're going to come out with all of your fingers and toes still attached at the end. And I have never seen anybody flunk a final defense. And here's the most important thing why. You're probably not going to flunk because more than your advisor, and certainly more than the other committee members, you know more about this project than anyone else on earth. Does that make sense? You did the project. And maybe your advisor is riding pretty close herd on it and very participatory as well, but nobody knows it like you do. So we're going to ask a lot of questions and get a sense of, have you achieved master rank? Have you achieved doctor rank? Whatever. But we can't know your project inside and out like you do, all right? So have that thought in your back pocket when you go into that meeting. No matter how badly it goes, you know more than anybody else in the room about that project. They know a lot more about other stuff, but that's where the conversation can go. All right, we're over time. Let's end it here. I'm still around for questions, of course. If you need to stick around for a second, ask them. Okay, cool. All right, continue putting in some early bullet level thoughts on the content of your thesis or dissertation. Just quick words or phrases. You'll turn those into sentences and paragraphs later on. Just start filling out the whole skeleton that you've got with the headings and subheadings. Okay, cool. We've got a little bit of time on that, so this is where the magic happens. See you later. All right, Catherine, hope we did okay. Hopefully that was audible the whole time. My screen, my camera is blacked out. I don't know if you can see me or not, but.
No, yeah, it's blacked out for me too.
Okay, so there's something going on with my web camera here. It's showing like it's working, but it is not. So I'll take a picture of the chalkboard here. It's just the stuff we talked about, and I'll post that on the course website for us, okay?
Okay. When you're talking about, I remember, so I've watched a couple of recorded lectures, and one of them was talking about like a lab notebook. Is that something that you want us to turn in at the end of the semester, or?
No, just send me like a cell phone photo of, the notebook, and just like today, we'll check in just a couple times throughout the semester, and, somebody will hold up their notebook and I can see there's some writing on there. I don't know. I don't care what the writing is. Just that folks are using them and being functional in that sort of basic research skill.
Okay, cool. And then
Go on.
I was gonna say, I think I should be able to attend class like this. I might be like in the field or like just driving or something, but I should be able to at least like listen in so I can kind of keep up
Yeah, that sounds good.
with what's going on.
This works for me. It's not really any extra effort or whatever. So happy to do it this way if you're able to. And
Okay.
if I'll run the meeting and the recording either way. So if you're you're driving and your cell phone reception goes out, or you drive into a valley or something, you should be able to access the recordings afterwards as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
All right, it's good to have you.
Yeah,
See
thanks.
you next time.
All right, bye.